how can a woman be unclean when she's on her cycle? You're talking about something that is coming from her womb, from the place that gives life. How could it be unclean? What I want to share with you today is about women and the power that spiritual power that women possess that they have been hiding from us. They haven't told us these things about ourselves, and how much beneficial the world would be if women were more empowered to be women and to live in the power of femininity and womanhood. I think a lot of ancient women knew and understood their bodies so much better than we do. And because of that, they had more success than we did. You know, they were able to do so much more than we did. There were matriarchal societies where women were leaders and they led from their feminine power. My goal is to get us to start appreciating ourselves more, start acknowledging our femininity or womanhood, things that make us women, and the power that is in that. And that includes our menstrual cycle and understanding the significance and spiritual power of our menstrual cycles. You know, in ancient times, they actually worshipped women. Women were like gods. One of my main takeaways from this is how different modern women are from ancient women in that they valued so much fertility. And you will know that ancient women valued fertility just by looking at the goddess archetypes that you will see in most of the mythical stories told by different cultures, ancient cultures. Those gods, they're not really gods, they're really principles, you know, attributes, qualities. If you observe those goddesses, you will see that majority of them were goddesses of fertility, because fertility was so important to ancient women, because they understood that a part of their purpose was their fertility. A big part of a woman's purpose is her contribution to the continuation of life, right? Life doesn't come through any other being except through the woman, except through the one who carries a womb. And that is vital to life and the continuation of life. So a woman has to be very important just for that reason, right? She's the only one that carries life. That's what I really want to get into today. And I'm going to start by introducing you to a book that I read a couple months ago. It really stemmed from a question that I got from a viewer. And you know, I love you guys because you ask me such good questions sometimes, things that really make me think, and you send me to go and do more research and study and learn. It helps me. It helps me to grow. It helps me to learn more and be able to share more as well. So I remember a viewer asked me something about how ancient women treated menstrual cycles. And I thought it was a good question. And I said, you know, I really should look deeper into this. And I really could find some information on how ancient women in the Americas, how they deal with menstrual cycles. I was searching for something more east. You know, I was trying to find something in Africa. What can I learn about women on that side? And I am a big follower and fan of Indus Valley culture. And so I'm very much into Hindu culture, very much into yoga. You hear me talk about that. And yoga, not only in the sense of yoga poses. Like, most people don't know that yoga is so much more than just poses. There's a whole spiritual side to it. There's a whole healing side to it. I love Ayurveda, and you know it's one of the healing systems that I love following, and I actually apply some of Ayurveda to my own life, and I feel that it is effective, right? In a lot of ways, a lot of things within Ayurveda make sense to me. And it's the same thing with yoga as well. A lot of that culture coming out of Indus Valley, it resonates. And so, what I do know is that those same people from, the Indus Valley culture are connected to the people of Ethiopia, the people of Nile Valley civilizations, right? Those people, those cultures are closely linked and closely related. So, a lot of what you'll find within the Indus Valley culture, you will find it in Ethiopia, you will find it in Sudan, you will find it in Egypt, all along the Nile Valley. You will find similarities in these cultures, right? So I came across this book in my search to find out more about what ancient women were doing, how they were treating their menstrual cycles. I came across this book by Sinu Joseph. It's called Ritu Vidya, Ancient Science Behind Menstrual Practices. I actually came across this book on the internet. I was trying to buy it through Amazon and couldn't get it. I've tried finding different places to purchase it online, couldn't find it. So I finally decided to ask my book supplier, iNation, to find it for me. So he got it, and he got several copies as well. So if you are interested in this book, you can find it with him. He has it. He should have it still, copies of this book. What I love about this book, because we don't realize that a lot of Sanskrit words, which is an ancient Indian language, a lot of Sanskrit words, we pronounce them wrong because we pronounce them with our English and understanding. So she gives you a Sanskrit pronunciation guide, which I love. So you are able to see how different letters or different combinations of letters and letters with dots above them or dots below them, how you should pronounce those. It gives a different sound, and sound is so important in Sanskrit, because a lot of these ancient languages, the vibration of the words are really, really powerful. And it's one of the reasons why yogis have mantras. They have mantras that they repeat because these mantras are powerful. They're powerful in changing your life, changing your surroundings, changing anything. It's a lot of people use mantras for manifestation, not mantras in English, mantras in ancient tongue, right? So, and not only, even in the book it speaks about this, how in some other ancient languages as well, certain words and certain mantras are really powerful, and so women aren't allowed to speak certain mantras. They're mantras that activate certain chakras in your body. In particular, for the woman, mantras that activate the sacral chakra will definitely affect us and affect us when we're on our cycles as well. So word sound is so important in these ancient languages. It's important for us to understand these things. And going back to what I was saying earlier about curse words, and how powerful your words can be when you are using curse words. You are actually condemning or damning, or you're putting out a negative vibration. This word now, Re. It has a dot under it. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right either. She says that in the book that RTU is pronounced Ritu. Vidya. And Ritu in Sanskrit means menstruation and Vidya means knowledge. So this book is menstruation knowledge. It's such a good book, guys. It's such a good book. I'd recommend it. If you're a woman, if you have daughters, I'd recommend you get this book. If not for her, at least educate yourself so you can share this information with her, because it is so valuable. It is so important that women know these things. For me, I have found religion to be very confusing a lot of times. Particularly, I grew up in a Christian home, so there are lots of questions I had about Christianity and the reason why we do certain things. And in the Bible, it talks about a woman being unclean when she's on her cycle, and certain churches, not all, but some, restrict women from doing certain things. Some churches restrict women. The ancient churches used to restrict women from being in the temple during certain times. And I find this is something that you will find across religions, because the Hindus practice this, Muslims practice this, other religious groups practice this as well. And I'm thinking, well, there must be something there. And there's never really truly a good explanation for why this is so. And even in Rastafari, I've come across it as well, because in Bubble Hill, women aren't allowed to enter certain. I don't even know if you can go into Bubble Hill at all when a woman is on her cycle. I'm not certain. Or if it is that there are only certain parts of Bubble Hill that she can explore when she's on her cycle. And I can accept these things, especially if it is explained to me properly. But it was never really explained. It's just that they say that women are unclean. And I'm like, how can a woman be unclean when she's on her cycle? You're talking about something that is coming from her womb, from the place that gives life. How could it be unclean? That makes no sense to me. So I never accepted that, not from Christianity, not from Rastafari, not from any religion at all. I need a proper explanation as to why women are unclean. Why you say women are unclean during this period. Also, at Bubble Hill, women actually go through what they call a 21-day purity. So for 21 days out of the month, women are in isolation. So 7 days before her period, she goes into isolation. 7 days of her menstruation, she's in isolation. 7 days after, she's in isolation. So she's not able to be with her family. She's not able to cook. She's not able to clean. She doesn't do anything during those 21 days except meditate, right? What is the explanation for those things? And I've always found that they fail to explain what is the science behind this. Why are you doing this? Why were our ancestors doing this, right? And there is a reason. There are reasons for this. And this has been the only book that has really and truly been able to answer my questions. In India, women aren't allowed in. There are certain temples where women aren't allowed at all. Whether they're on their period or not, they're not allowed. Particularly menstruating women, right? Women become allowed to go into certain temples when they have stopped menstruating. In other words, when they're experiencing menopause, right? That's the only time that some women are allowed. The reason that women aren't allowed to go in certain temples is because these temples in India are consecrated, right? Meaning that there is the presence of a deity within these temples. A deity dwells within these temples. And they have actually been consecrated. You know how Christians tend to talk about, oh, this being the temple of God, and that God dwells here and whatever, but I was talking about having this conversation about consecration recently with my father, funnily enough, because I remember him calling his church a temple. And I'm saying, what really makes your church a temple? What does it mean? What does a temple mean? What is a temple? A temple is a space that is consecrated. What is consecration? Right? A place that is ceremonially invoked by a deity, right? Or the invocation of a deity within that space. And how do you know that there's a presence of that deity there? I've never walked. I think you should walk into a Christian space and feel a presence and sense. You should have an experience of the deity that is present within that temple, which is what Sinu speaks about in this book about the temples in India, which is why I so want to go to India to experience this, right? Because people speak of the presence that is in those temples, right? But I've never really experienced that in Christian churches. The only place, and I said it to him, I didn't even finish my sentence before he completed my sentence. I said the only church that I've ever gone to and felt a presence is, and he finished it by saying, the Catholic Church is the only place. I'm certain that they do consecration in those churches. The only thing is, what deity is in that church? You know, can't really trust Catholics, to be honest. What presence is really in those churches? You might feel a presence when you're going there for sure, but whose presence? What presence? In India now, what happens when a woman is on her cycle, and it has happened many times, after the space has been consecrated and the spirit or the deity dwells there, they call it a murti. A woman can undo the consecration if she enters the temple, right? Because a woman who is on her cycle is said to be a goddess herself. She's said to be, she takes over as the goddess of the temple when she enters the temple on her cycle, right? So once she enters, the presence is no longer there because she becomes the goddess. She becomes the deity within the space because she's there. So a lot of times, I don't remember the name of the people who manage the temples, or the ones who light the pujas and so on, who deals with the ceremonies of the temples. A lot of times when they're there, if they have left and it's only one person, usually it's only one person can do the consecration. So if the person left and the woman comes there with their cycle, then the presence is no longer in the temple. So they have to go back and find this person to come and do the consecration again. Because the presence leaves once the woman is there. Remember in a previous video, I spoke about women who bleed with the moon, with the full moon, and women who bleed with the new moon. And I was saying that women who bleed with the new moon are most fertile because they have their ovulation during the full moon. And women who bleed with the full moon are more spiritual because they are less fertile, and so they have their ovulation during the new moon, right? So it all comes down to that, the fact that a woman is more spiritual because of her cycle, because her cycle represents not infertility. Her cycle is like her not continuing life then, right? She's not creating life. So her cycle represents her. And once a woman is not creating life, once she is not fertile, once she's not doing anything to produce life, then she is more spiritual, right? Than a woman who is. So that is the reason. A woman is highly spiritual. She's like a goddess when she's on her cycle because she's doing the opposite of creating life. You cannot be creating life and then say that you are a spirit. That's why you have nuns. Those women who aren't sexual. Even though women don't have to do what men do, to reach certain levels of spiritual heights. Men have to actually abstain. They have to go into women don't have to be celibate because we have our cycles. So we can reach certain levels of spiritual elevation because of our cycles. Men actually have to they have to retain their semen in order to do it, right? And that's why you have priests. That's why you have, even in the Baba Shanti order, you have priests who don't lie with women, because for them to reach certain spiritual ascension, they cannot be having sex. They cannot be participating in the process of creation if they're focused on spiritual heights, right? So it's one or the other. It's like two different realms. You're in the earth realm or you're in the spiritual realm, right? But you can't be in both. This is the reason why women are revered, seen as goddesses and seen as really high, because we are able to reach certain levels of spiritual elevation when we are on our cycle because of what our period represents. Our period represents the opposite of creating life. So really and truly, when a woman is on her period, she is highly spiritual. Like you can speak words over your cycle that change situations, change circumstances. You can do a lot of magic with your cycle. A lot. This is one of the reasons why they talk about women putting their cycle in men's food, and women doing things with their period blood to time in and so on, because there is actually something to it. There is actually power in period blood, right? I don't know exactly what is the reasoning behind the knowledge of this being concealed behind women being unclean. I'm going to lean towards this being some kind of anti-woman, misogynistic type of rhetoric to put women down and not let women know about their powers. It has happened so many times in history. Even I spoke before about what European men did to their women who were highly spiritual. They called them witches and killed them. They burned them at the stake. They cut off their heads because these women had great knowledge, and great knowledge that a lot of them didn't understand or couldn't relate to. So they thought that, okay, we need to get rid of these types of women. In other cultures, they revere them. In other cultures, they put them on pedestals. They worship them, right? This is the reason why. There's a temple in India. This is one of the temples that I really want to visit. It's called Kamakya. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, but it's a temple with a female deity. They call the deity Devi, right? Like, it's funny. Kamala Harris, her first name Kamala is the name of a goddess, but her middle name is Devi actually also. So Devi is the word for goddess in Sanskrit. So her name is actually the goddess Kamala, which is funny. In the temple, is a, a female goddess, and in that temple, the image, or the usually there is something in the temple that represents the deity. In this particular temple, the deity is actually the formation of a yoni, and it's a natural formation. So they built the temple around this natural formation of a yoni, and it actually has a river that flows every year. So around June every year it flows, and it flows red. So for a few days, they say that the goddess is on her cycle during those days, and so the temple is actually closed, so people aren't allowed to go into the space during that time. But after that, they have a long festival called Ampubachi Festival, where people go and people take water from the waters from the river. People go in the temple, people do a whole lot of meditation, people pray, people bring their daughters there for healing. Women who have womb issues go to these temples to get healed as well. Like, these are real things that happen in these temples. And even Sinu Joseph, who wrote this book, she speaks about her experiences in temples, where she actually feels sensations in her womb area, or where she sees like drastic change in her cycle. Like, she will visit a temple and then her cycle come, or she will visit a temple and then her cycle don't come and it's supposed to come, right? And lots of different things happen to different women when they go into these cycles, into these temples. So it's so important for a woman to know not to do certain things when she is on her cycle, because she can actually hurt herself when she does certain things. When you go into a temple, you know, people think that, oh, you know, they're demeaning women or berating women, or women aren't allowed to go into temples, they're not allowed to do this. But actually, it's for the protection of women, because a lot of women get hurt going into certain temples, because in the temple, what happens to your body when you go into certain temples works in an opposite way to how a woman's body works. So we can actually harm ourselves by going to certain temples when we shouldn't, by performing certain things when we shouldn't. I remember I have a puja lamp. I have several puja lamps, right? This is one, right? I told you I'm into Hindu culture, right? So these lamps are very good for clearing energies, clearing blockages. People, they use them in temples. They use them for invoking. It carries a lot of energy. And I remember 1 month out. It's actually called a puja lamp. So 1 month. And in these temples, there are particular people who deal with puja. They're set, that is their role, to deal with puja. And they're not usually women. Usually the people who tend to the temples are men, right? And I remember 1 month, I was feeling so much pain during my cycle. I was feeling more pain than I had ever felt in any of my cycles. And I was wondering, why am I feeling so much pain? This is strange. This is different. And then I thought about it, because I was actually reading this during the time. And so I got to thinking, I wonder if it's because I like the puja, right? Because the puja might be activating different things in my body, might be activating my sacral chakra, right? And what they say happens when your sacral chakra is activated, and when you go into certain temples as well, they call it apna vayu or something like that, where the energy and the flow of energy and the flow of um, liquid in your body moves up, right? Which is the opposite of what's happening when you're on your cycle, which is everything is moving down, it's going downwards. So when you're doing something that is moving energy up and your body is doing something that is moving energy down, that's two different things that's happening, right? Two opposing things. So you're bound to feel discomfort in your body when that is happening. So I think that was what was happening that month. And since that, I have never done puja when I'm on my cycle. I don't do any of that when I'm on my cycle. I tell my king man, say, listen, if you want the puja lit, you do it yourself. I'm not doing it. And so since that, I've never felt those cramps anymore. And that could be in my head, but that's just my experience. When we are in a certain state as a woman, we don't need to be doing anything extra spiritually because we're already in a spiritual state. We're already in a spiritual state. So one of the best things that a woman can do when she's on her cycle is meditate. One of the best things you can do is meditate. And as well, when you are ovulating during the new moon, it's a good time for spiritual practice. Women back in the day were told that they weren't supposed to, and in other religions as well, what you find is that women aren't allowed to do certain things on their cycle, and some of those things have to do with sacrament, with things that are consecrated. Women aren't allowed to do communion on their cycle because they're it's supposed to be representative of the deity. They're supposed to be eating the flesh of the deity, right? So women aren't allowed to do that during that period. Similar to the Hindus, the Muslim women aren't allowed to do like certain, they call it they aren't allowed to do, because they're supposed to do certain poses when they're in worship or when they're in prayer or meditation or something, and women aren't allowed to do those poses because those poses will hurt them because they're going against what their cycle is doing, right? There are other religions that the book mentioned that don't restrict women at all, and it's because they don't participate in anything that requires consecration. So they don't consecrate anything. The temple isn't consecrated. They don't eat, or they don't do communion. They don't have any spaces. They don't have any things around them that's consecrated. So they don't really do rituals there, right? So women aren't prevented from participating in certain spaces because they don't invoke the presence of a deity into anything or anyone or anywhere. This kind of gave me a whole other look into who I am as a woman, what it means for me to be a woman, what it means for me to have a cycle, my connection to earth, my connection to spirit, my connection to creation. It also makes me wonder, if a woman decides to take a more spiritual path, will she be less fertile because of that? It makes me think about a whole lot of things. Sometimes we think that the things that we do are so simple, but we don't realize how much we are creating our world through our thoughts, through the things that we think, say, the things that we participate in, how we are creating the world around us. So I find it really fascinating, and I'm definitely going to be studying more about this um, I want to hear what else might be known in other cultures as well. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to discover what other women do in other places. So this book really took me on a journey, a journey um, to self, a journey to self. So I recommend you get it. Please get in touch with iNation if you're in Jamaica and get yourself this book. It is on Amazon, so I'm sure if you live in the US you can get it as well. On the request that the subscriber made, I do want to do that video because she requested, she wanted to know how women treat their menstrual cycle, let's say the ancient way, the ancient practices by women. So you can look out for that video that is coming up. All right, so that's it for this video. Please share your thoughts. I want to hear what you guys think. um Good, bad, and indifferent. You don't have to agree with me, but you can definitely share your thoughts respectfully, please. What do you think? And especially the women, I welcome you, which I think most of you are, but I know I have some male followers anyway. But let me know what you think about this theory. It's a reality for the women who live in India. So let me know what you think. What has been your experience, your religious experience, your spiritual experience as far as your cycle is concerned, if you've ever had any. Let's know. Share with us in the comment section. All right. So you know what to do. Like the video. Before you do anything else, just stop and give it a like right now, please. Right? If you haven't subscribed, if you're new here, please subscribe. And yeah, welcome to the family if you have just subscribed. Thank you so much for watching, and we will link up in the next video later.